So, how does an AI actually learn to understand us? How does it learn language? Well, it's definitely not magic. See, to teach an AI how to talk, you first have to give it something to read, a lot of something to read, which brings us to the really big question.
Right. Let's just dive in. How in the world do you take a machine, just circuits and code, and teach it something as complex as human language? I mean, all the rules, the nuances, the slang, everything.
Believe it or not, the answer is pretty simple in concept. You give it a library, a digital library of just unimaginable size, one that contains a huge chunk of everything we humans have ever written down. This library is what we call a dataset, and it is the absolute foundation for everything else. And that gets us to the core of it all, an AI's just insatiable appetite for data. You see, you can't just build a powerful language model out of thin air. It has to learn from examples, millions, billions of them, to even begin to understand the patterns of our world.
So, what even is a language model? At its heart, it's basically a probability machine. A good way to think about it is like a super, super advanced version of the autocomplete on your phone. It looks at a bunch of words and then just tries to predict the most likely word to come next. And to get good at that, it needs to see a mind-boggling number of examples of how we actually write and speak.
But here's the catch, and it's a big one. Not all data is created equal. You can't just dump the entire internet, typos and all, into a model and hope for the best. Nope. There's a recipe for the perfect data set, a set of ideal ingredients that developers are always trying to find. So here's what you're aiming for. The dataset needs to be absolutely massive and super diverse, right? Covering tons of topics and styles. But at the exact same time, it needs to be high quality and correct. Ideally, it's been cleaned up by humans to get rid of all the noise, junk like typos, bad grammar, or random bits of HTML code. And getting all of that at once? Yeah, that's the real challenge.
So, what do these giant digital libraries actually look like? Well, let's take a quick tour of some of the heavy hitters, the foundational texts that have been used to train some of the most powerful AI models out there today.
This table really shows you the trade-offs you have to make. On one end, you've got Common Crawl. It's just unimaginably huge. We're talking over 9.5 petabytes of raw web data, but it is messy. Then you have C4, which is basically a cleaned up version of that. On the complete other end of the spectrum, you have Wikipedia, way smaller but incredibly high quality and factual. And things like the pile try to mix it all together. Every single choice has its pros and cons.
Let's just zoom in on this for a second because it's a huge decision. It's the classic battle, raw power versus refined quality. Do you go with Common Crawl, this giant, unfiltered snapshot of the internet, warts and all? Or do you pick Wikipedia, which is carefully curated and fact-checked but has a very specific, kind of formal, encyclopedic tone? The dataset you pick really, truly shapes the personality of the AI.
Okay, so right about now, you're probably thinking, this sounds insanely complicated. How does anyone even get their hands on petabytes of data? Well, lucky for developers, the community came up with a really smart solution. The good news is that the machine learning world has basically built this giant central supermarket for data. You don't have to go digging all over the web. There's one place you can go to find pretty much any dataset you could ever want, all packaged up and ready to use. And that place is the Hugging Face repository. And Hugging Face makes it just ridiculously simple. It pretty much boils down to 3 basic steps. You browse their site to find the dataset you want, you import their special library into your code, and then you load the entire thing with a single command. It's all designed to be as easy as possible. And this right here, this is the magic command. Just look at that. This single line of code is all you need to download and get the entire Wikitext dataset ready. It handles the downloading, the caching, it formats it all perfectly for you. It's an incredibly powerful tool that has totally changed the game for accessing these huge resources.
But wait, getting the data is really only half the battle. Even after you've downloaded a really high-quality dataset, there's usually one more critical step you have to take before you can start training. It's time for the final polish.
And this is where the skill and experience really come in. Cleaning and preparing the raw text you've downloaded, it's often described as an art form. A really well-made post-processing function can make a massive difference in your model's performance, just by helping it focus on what actually matters. So what does this art look like? Well, it can be simple stuff, like stripping out leftover HTML tags, fixing weird extra spaces, or just making all the text lowercase so the model has fewer words to learn. The main goal here, the whole point, is to improve what we call the signal-to-noise ratio, to make the important language patterns stand out from all the distracting junk.
All right, we have covered a ton of ground. We've gone from these giant libraries of text all the way to the fine art of data cleaning. So let's bring it all home and boil it down to the most important things to remember from all this.
So, here are the 3 things to lock in. First, while having a big data set is important, data quality often matters even more. A smaller, super clean data set can beat a massive, noisy one. Second, if you're just starting out, your best bet is to begin with a pre-cleaned, curated data set like C4 or Wikipedia. And finally, for any developer, Hugging Face is, without a doubt, your best friend for getting started. And all of this leaves us with one final and pretty important question. The data we choose to train an AI on, that's the only world it will ever know. It shapes its knowledge, its style, its biases, its entire mind. So the choice isn't just a technical one. It's really a choice about what kind of world and which version of humanity we want our AI to learn from.